Hello, our lovely audience. Welcome to episode 6 of Your Daily DM with Debbie and Mahwish. And today's episode will be very interesting because we've gone away from our typical professional topics and we're bringing an episode which is related to a very famous show, The Bear. I'm sure a lot of you would have seen it. And there was an episode that was very famous, well watched, and a very pivotal episode, and it was called Polishing the Forks. So just to refresh everyone's memory, this is an episode where a character has gone to another place, another restaurant, and this restaurant is very famous, and they're actually polishing the forks per se, right? And he's just very aggravated because he's not doing a good job. And the person beside him says, "You're not doing a good job. They're streaks." And he's like, "It's just forks. They're just forks. So what's the big deal, right?" So he takes him outside and he says, "Listen, we have a huge line at the restaurant. People are coming in, they've made reservations well in advance. Do you even notice their faces when they're walking in? They're so happy, they're so excited, and we need to live up to their expectations. No job is trivial. Nothing really is below you. You have to be good at what you're doing." And there's a very enlightening quote that he says, and I'm going to read it because it's very empowering. He says, "I need you to respect the staff. I need you to respect the diners, and I need you to respect yourself." So let me take a pause and see what Debbie says about what she thought of the show, but especially this episode, and how are we going to take this episode further.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, this will be an exciting topic. When I saw that episode specifically, I thought it was very moving and very relevant to anybody who wants to achieve the highest success in their career, that they really take pride in what they do, even if they don't understand why they have to do what they're doing. And just to clarify, we're calling our episode Polishing Forks. I don't know what the actual episode was called.
Called Polishing the Forks, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it is.
Just to give everybody a little bit of background, I haven't watched the show. I'm continuing to watch the show, but this was Debbie's idea, so I'm very excited about it. I think it's a great topic. And I looked it up on YouTube just to give me some context, and yeah, it's called Polishing the Forks.
Oh, that's cool. Well, yeah, I found it a very moving episode, especially for the character. If, whoever hasn't seen it yet, I highly suggest it, to watch The Bear. It is a little bit stressful at the beginning, and you got to get used to it because there's a lot of yelling, but it's a very good and very heartfelt, well done show. But anyways, onto our topic, polishing the forks. So the thought here is that there's no job that should be beneath us. That I think we have an idea, certainly when we're young, of exactly how our life is going to go. That's not a surprise. And then pretty early on, we figure out, it doesn't really work that way. We talked about that in a prior episode where the pictures that they show you about your career going, up the ladder, but really it's more of a windy road. I think you described it really well. I think that was episode 1, actually. A lot of what leads to success in the career are those windy roads and those in the trenches type roles that seem to have absolutely nothing to do with the goals that you have. And so we wanted to talk about that and how to keep them into perspective, and maybe for me, the attitude to keep in place while you're in those spots and learning what you can learn from them. So, yeah.
So definitely being in the trenches is one aspect. And, the other aspect that we should explore a bit that I got was how important it is for anyone to recognize that you're worth something, but to have self-respect. Because going back to the episode, he lacked self-respect, and that's connected to having low self-esteem. As a matter of fact, I looked it up because I was watching the YouTube and I said, that's a very important topic. So let me look into it. And I came across a very telling statistic. Some of us read articles, and this is from Psychology Today back in 2019. So it's a little bit old, but it's still relevant. And it said more than 85% of the people worldwide have low self-esteem, which is connected to having lack of self-respect. 85%.
That's a huge number.
It is mostly everyone. Like 15% have this self-respect, but most of us do not acknowledge self-respect or don't have the right. Maybe we don't even understand what self-respect means. What are your thoughts?
I think first I'd like to know the questions that were asked to come up with those statistics, because I think there are areas in each of our lives where we feel like we could do better, and maybe we have lower self-esteem, or maybe it's not even low self-esteem, but like insecurity, which I guess can be translated to low self-esteem in certain areas. And then there are other areas where you feel awesome and
Yeah.
you're fine. So I think I would like to know a little bit more about the study and what was asked, and how 85% was the conclusion.
Yeah, I don't recall having all the questions listed, but I can definitely follow up to see if there's anything I might have missed. But there were no questions or criteria listed. They just talked about the fact that 85% have low self esteem, or 85% worldwide have low self esteem. And then they went into elaborating on what is, like, how can you improve your self respect, setting boundaries, recognizing that not everybody's going to like you all the time. And that was difficult for me. That's still difficult for me. That's an opportunity for improvement. But yeah, not everybody's going to like you. You need to understand what you're good at, what you're not, and be able to recognize that and be self-aware. So that's what they went into, rather than the questions that went into it.
So then, on that note, how do we improve self-esteem? If I think back to the show, the big lesson that this character learned was that, everything counts. Everything that you are doing, there's a lesson in it. There's a learning in it. There's a value to it. And it might not be hitting on the value level you want it to, right? He was training to run the restaurant, and they put him in charge of the forks to make sure that there weren't any spots on them. But that is at the basis of making that successful restaurant such a necessity. And then how could he relate to anybody in that position if he didn't do it himself? So I think it's really key to sit there in those, trenches, or why am I doing this ridiculous job? This is not what I thought I came to this location to learn. That humility that keeps you in a state of learning and willingness to put yourself into somebody else's position. Like, that wasn't going to end up being his position. He knew that. He thought it was going to be a waste of time. But really, it took him to a spot of humility, I think.
Yeah, and self-recognition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think you and I have discussed multiple times in our current environments where we go into the nitty gritty details sometimes, and it's really, really painful, and it's not fun. And I always question, why do I have to do this over and over and over again? But when you're going through that painful experience and going into the nitty gritty detail, this is where your growth happens. And this is where you learn something that you may not have learned before. And then you come out on the other side stronger, but now you know what the issues were. If you didn't know what the issues were and were the improvements that you needed to make, where without going to the nitty gritty details, you wouldn't have the same level of transformation that you would have expected, right? if you don't go into the nitty gritty details and talk to the people who are doing the work and understand what their frustrations are, you're never going to have the same level of transformation that's needed.
This actually reminds me of an employee I had. I mean, I've been through this a bunch of times, but I had an employee who was very upset that he had been assigned a job that he felt was far below him. And so he wasn't doing a good job, kind of like on the show. He wasn't doing a good job because of just that. This is so far beneath me. And he came into my office one day and he told me, this is so far below me. And my answer to him was, well, then you should be rocking it, but you're not. So if it's so far below your capability, why aren't you just blowing this out of the water?
Right.
And that was the basis of him beginning to change. And he didn't like what he heard, but I told him anyway. And I really saw him start to shift his attitude, his approach, his follow-up, and other people started to notice that he was a better person to work with. He went from being somebody that people above my level were telling me I should get rid of and all of this to like a success story. It was not easy. It was extremely painful for me as his manager because he was angry. He was so angry. But once he stepped back and took a minute and, took a second to address his own pride and go, okay, good point. If this is below me, I should be rocking it. And it was an important thing. He just felt it was below him.
Now
so I think it's
talking about, but we can have that discussion afterwards.
I'll tell you later.
Okay. No, but I'm glad because we don't have a lot of those success stories where you can really change somebody's mindset or their attitude or their perception. If you don't have a purpose or a vision, it's very hard to change some people.
But I think the other key in the show was that somebody took him aside and was like, yo, dude, check yourself. And as a leader, I think it's our responsibility when we do see somebody struggling, we got to let them know, hey, what is going on? Let's have a moment here to reflect and just do a reality check on how you should be doing.
But not everyone would listen to you and change. That's what I was saying, right?
Yeah, true.
Every one of those interventions will result in a success story because it's very tough to take that feedback and change because I've gone through the same process where I didn't have a success story. It was what it was, and it was not a success story. But yeah, we've had those situations where people have come around and changed the way they tackle some of those big issues or anything that they're working on. So.
Well, and of course, the other side is for those who are listening, who aren't managing people, but want to know what the heck am I doing in this job? I would just say extract everything you can from it and do it to the best of your ability. Have that self-respect to do your best, your absolute best. And I find that if you are striving to be the best at what you do, which I know I do, I know you do, Mahwish, work will find you. People will figure out how to give you broader responsibility, more responsibility, and then before you know it, you're in charge of the restaurant, just like on the show.
Is that what happened? Because I haven't watched.
Yeah. Oh, spoiler. Oh, no.
Spoiler alert, team. Well, I'm sure I'll get to it, but okay. Good for him. Good for him.
Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to spoil.
No worries. So I'm going to take us back to the topic of self-respect. That's an opportunity where I'm always what I'm learning about myself and where I need to draw the line. That's work in progress for me. I'd like to understand from your perspective. I know we've talked about in earlier episodes too, you do a better job in who you give access to and who you interact with, right? You do a much, much, much better job than I do. I'm trying. It's not at the level I want to be, but I'm trying. So, along the same lines, how have you understood self-respect, and what have you done yourself to improve your self-respect?
I learned how to listen to myself, to pay attention to how my body reacts. Really, that is the number one tell that a woman has. I've only lived as a woman, so I know we have intuition, right? And that is that feeling that you get when you have to go talk to a certain person, or if somebody even comes in the room and they start laying their energy out, you can feel it. So I started paying attention to that, and the corresponding either amount of cortisol releasing in my body. I mean, it hurts, right? It physically is painful
Yeah.
to go through being physically in a situation or next to somebody who is creating a physical response. So I would say that's number one. And then besides that, I would say to take an inventory of your life and the things that you feel you need to improve on. And in the relationships category, if it is friendships or whatever, we'll just say it's relationships, whatever the type of relationship is, then I would really seek out tools to, and whether or not that's counseling or whatever, just a third party, some kind of education to figure out what does healthy look like in this situation. So I know, because we all get conditioned to dealing with certain situations. You know, the more you're in it, I mean, work has cultures. That culture is that situation that you're pushing yourself into every day because you need to pay the mortgage or whatever, but then you get accustomed to it. And now that can kind of dull what healthy actually looks like. So, yeah, first pay attention to how you feel, do that assessment, then understand what healthy looks like. And on top of that, once you learn what healthy is supposed to look like, you usually the people that can teach you that stuff can also teach you how to go through conversations or transitions to either get that, express that to the person, or you realize over time and learning, this person should not be in my life. And then it makes the decision of cutting them off easier.
Yeah.
So that's what I do or have done.
No, I think those are very valid points for sure. You brought up something like the body language changes. I noticed that there's certain people that I talk to just gives me anxiety. Like,
Yep.
I want to have to go into a situation where I have to talk to them. And all of a sudden, my instant reaction is I have all of my guards up. And I'm talking
Yep.
to a robot, okay? I'm not smiling. I'm talking like very like a
Yep.
robot, right? Like scripted. I have to be careful at what I say, how I say it, and that really takes the energy out of me. And what I try to do is I avoid those conversations as much as possible. I know it's not the right thing to do in like at work, because you have to be constantly communicating, but I try my best to avoid. Like, sometimes I resort to emails. I mean, it's very hard. But then others, I'm like, yeah, let's meet every day. If you want to meet twice a day, I can meet you twice a day. I have no problem. But I just, yeah. And then there's no way to get around it, but all I try to do is mentally prepare myself to get into that call, right? Like, oh my God.
Yeah, you cannot avoid everyone. If you did that, it looks like 85% of those people on earth is who you'd be avoiding, right? So you do have to come into contact, but it's who you let in your personal space,
Yeah,
right? And then of course, if work is inappropriate, then there are usually channels. If it's that bad, there are channels you can go through with HR or what have you, if that seems appropriate. But who you let into those to your life,
yeah.
because those people you're dealing with at work, they will never be in your life.
No, I
They're in a limited,
have.
slot on the calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
no, it really matters who you let into your life. It plays a huge difference because you build off of that energy. And like you said, before you know it, you don't know anything else. So,
Yeah.
no, well said.
So, with that, we just wanted to stop in really quick, do a short little talk about polishing forks, the value in it, the way it's related to your self-esteem, the way no job is too small, and really just encourage you wherever you are in your life. If you're looking around at your job that you're doing and it's not making any sense whatsoever, there is a bigger picture. And just I would like to encourage you just to stick with it, do the best you can, extract everything you can in terms of learning.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is what you said. A lot of times when we mentor people, coming back to the mentorship episode that we did, we come across folks that are very much focused on titles and grades and where am I headed, in 5 years. That's all good to have, but don't just focus on the levels and the titles. There's a lot more to work than just titles. And if you get expanded responsibility, exposure, focus on that. And that's what it comes down to. And that's what Debbie was saying in the summary. Don't just get hung up on titles, but focus on being your best that you can be. And the titles and the compensation will follow.
Absolutely. Couldn't said it better myself. So
you triggered
awesome.
me, so that's why we work well together.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
All right. With that, we'll wrap it up.
All right. Thank you for joining us on episode 6 of your Daily DM. Leave a comment down below. And if you like any of this, please subscribe. And we will talk to you next time. Bye.